board.
All right, folks. So as always, we're going to end with our closing circle. And I have a question for you. So your question today is, how does consent relate to relationship rights and responsibilities? So how does consent relate to relationship rights and responsibilities? So a bit of a tongue twister, but we're going to get through it. Yeah, so I will call out folks sort of in my circle. Reminder, as always, you have the right to pass. And we will start with Callie.
So I think that the way that consent relates to relationship rights and responsibilities is, so first of all, you always have the right to consent in a relationship. So you always have the right to either give or take away consent. And for responsibilities, it's always up to each person to ask for their partner's consent before they do things. I think that, like, even though you're in a relationship, you can't always assume that like certain things will just be cool. And even though you might have done them before, that doesn't mean that that gives you a free pass to just do it whenever.
Absolutely. Great. Yes, we know what happens when you assume not good things. So next we'll have Mel.
Yeah, I think when I think of consent and relationship rights and responsibilities, I always think of boundaries for me, which is something that I am still learning. I wish I had this program when I was even in my 20s. That would have really helped me, because I didn't know that I actually could have any boundaries in a relationship, and it really affected the way that I went through them. And so when I think of this question, I always think it's something that a mantra that I say to myself, which is I have the right to have my boundaries respected when I name them.
I like that mantra. Again, boundaries is definitely something I think we all need to work on. Or I definitely need to. But, all right, Annalise.
I think consent relates to relationship rights and responsibilities in that you need to consent to what rights and responsibilities are expected of you, what responsibilities are expected of you, and what rights you have as a couple, as individuals. So having the expected responsibility to text every single morning or something like that is not necessarily a responsibility unless that person has consented to that and decided that, yeah, that's something I want to do for my partner, and like I want to be held to that.
Awesome. Yeah, having those open communications about what you want, what you don't. Great. All right, Abby.
I'd say consent is related to relationship rights and responsibilities, in the sense that as an individual, you have a responsibility to communicate your boundaries to your partner. And this is something that may not be spoken about in the first few meetings, but then it's important for your partner to know your sexual and romantic boundaries. And you have a right to ensure that, you know, your partner understands where that's coming from. And that again ties into understanding the emotional landscape of your partner. If they do have, or if they do talk about a certain responsibility or right, it probably comes from a certain experience or from a certain place. So understanding that as a partner is also your responsibility, but I also feel that each individual should communicate this, and constant communication is really important in any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important conversation. Not an easy conversation, but such an important one. Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, Will.
How does consent relate to rights and responsibilities in a relationship? I think you have the responsibility to yourself to talk honestly with yourself about what your boundaries are and what are you comfortable with and not, and go into it knowing, and don't I'll figure out along the way. Know your boundaries and talk about it with yourself. If this happens, what am I going to do? How am I going to say it? How am I going to be assertive with what I want? How am I going to know if I'm not being respected? You know, self-talk is really important, and this is one of the areas I think that can be very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, I like it. I always think that the best time to sort of think about relationship boundaries is before you're in a relationship, and what you want and what you don't. All right, Brad.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelsey. So consenting in a relationship, I think it applies to basically all decisions in a relationship, right? In the consenting process, I feel personally, it helps everyone to feel like they're autonomous and they're working within their own boundaries, as other people have said. I think the consenting process is really showing that you respect yourself and your boundaries, but you also respect your partner's boundaries, and you respect your partner in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Right. Alicia?
Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about one thing that's really, really important to me are kind of ethics, values, and morals. So I think that it's really important, it's imperative to have a right to your individual values and beliefs, and to have those who you are in a relationship with actually respect those, to know those and to actually respect those moving forward.
Thank you. Michael?
So I would say that as a partner, you have the responsibility to obtain consent in a safe environment, meaning I'm not going to ask you in front of all your friends or on a Zoom meeting because that's not really safe, and you might not feel comfortable saying that you're uncomfortable with whatever I'm asking about. So making sure that you're asking in a safe environment and a I guess, more private conversation as opposed to a more public conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that. It's trying not to, we don't want to coerce our partners into saying yes to something they don't want to say yes to. So great.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, Kelsey H.
I think that consent relates to relationship rights, in the sense that it is any partner's relationship right to refuse and set those boundaries and communicate those boundaries clearly in a respectful manner. And I think that it's the individual's responsibilities within a relationship to ask those questions and to ask them in a respectful and straightforward way, so that that communication is there and, you know, reciprocated well.
Awesome. Yes, thanks. All right, last but not least, Maisha.
It's so great to hear everyone's perspective and take on it. And I think as one of the last person, I think what I really reflect on that in theory, we say that, you know, consent is a right and it's my partner's responsibility to take with consent. But I think closing with a compassionate approach that it is hard not to feel guilty or that you have done something wrong when your boundaries have been violated and people don't ask for your consent. And, you know, you might make some attributions to make sense or explain as to why my consent was not taken. And I think it's easy for the third person to say that, you know, why didn't you not know your rights? Why didn't you not act on it? But I think that even accepting the fact that in a relationship, giving and asking for consent is a right is an ongoing journey. And you also need to be in a safe and accepting space for that journey. So I think if people are not becoming assertive right away, I think it's for people who work, it's the adults that we work with youth to give them the compassionate to make them resilient towards that.
Awesome, thank you. I like that consent is an ongoing journey, absolutely. Yeah, for me, I think consent relates to relationship responsibilities because it's my partner's responsibility to check in on me to make sure that I'm cool and down with whatever we're doing, whether it's something sort of sexy, whether it's something not super sexy, like holding, I mean, maybe it's sexy to you, but like holding hands, braiding hair, playing basketball, that it's in every activity that we have to be checking in with our friends, our partners, sort of whoever, and that I have the right to say no, always. I always have the right to say no. I have the right to say, I don't know. I have the right to say maybe. I have the right to say not right now. I have the right to say maybe or later. And I have the right to say yes. And I'm excited for that. And I want that. And that all of those situations, there's not one best answer. There's going to be different situations that call for different responses. And all of those are valid. And all of those have to be respected. And that's something that I would want to leave all of you. So thank you for your time today. It's an awesome session as always. And we will see you next week. So have a wonderful week. Right. Bye-bye.